So I won't comment any further because it is time to get into our main topic for the month of May.
Here we go.
Which, of course, is cool spaceships in Doctor Who. Now, this longer listeners of our show will know came out of an off-the-cuff comment when we were discussing cool alien worlds. And I made a comment, when I was a kid, when I was a young boy watching Doctor Who, the things that I really wanted were cool alien worlds, cool aliens, and cool spaceships. And I said, maybe we need to talk about cool spaceships sometimes. And you agreed, and we put it on the schedule, and here we are, which only leaves cool aliens to do. Maybe that's the thing for next year.
Yeah.
But, that really is just the sole reason why I want to have this conversation, because I think that cool spaceships is a big part of Doctor Who. It's something that I think all of us enjoy, and this is a chance just to, chat happily about a few of them. Any general comments before we dive into our picks, Rob?
Oh, no. I've got a little cheat in my list. I'll say that.
Yeah, I have too.
Aside from that, no, I'm good.
Right, so we're going to dive in then. We're going to do it as we sometimes do with our list-based chats, because this isn't the list makers. We're actually going to do it in transmission order. So hopefully this is going to evolve spaceships in Doctor Who, and we're going to talk about them. So the picks go me, you, me, you, me, you, me, which is a good mix. And I will just say, we know what seasons or series our picks come from, but we don't know each other's picks. So we just know enough that we could slot them in order.
Yes.
But I will dive in because the first two are mine, and the first comes from season 3, and that is a gigantic spaceship, which I've put in here not because it's a great model. In fact, we never see the model of the exterior, but it is a great concept and a great interior, and that is the Ark from the story The Ark.
Good pick. Yes.
And this, if you want a cool sci-fi concept, a spaceship that is large enough to have a jungle and a desert and a tundra, and it's got the whole of humanity and monoidity. What's I don't know. The whole of the human race and the monoids in microform stored, transporting them to another world. The idea of that steel sky above them, transporting generations for 700 years across space, I think is an amazing concept. And whilst we don't have a model of the exterior, and I think it's probably for the best because it wouldn't have looked good in the 1960s. I think of the model of the rocket ship from the Sensorites, for example, which isn't the best.
Oh, but then you get to something like the Space Pirates, and it's got amazing models.
Well, that's right. And I actually had the Space Pirates as an honourable mention, and I might mention them briefly. But yeah, I mean, they are much better by the end of the 60s. But there is some really good model work of the interior there, particularly when the statue's being moved out of the ship. And it has got this sort of wonderful backdrop of a huge, vast space. So for design in the period and for concept, I'm very happy to open with the Ark.
Oh, no complaints from me. A maligned story in many ways too. So I'm glad to see it make the list.
No, sadly it is, but I think it's fantastic. Now, you mentioned the Space Pirates, and I came very close to having them as my next pick, but I went with something that does the same thing, I think even better, and that is Frontier in Space.
Okay.
So I've picked this because this is the definitive Doctor Who space opera. I think it's even better than the Space Pirates in its space opera aspects. And in this one, you've got the Earth cargo ship, the Earth battleship, the Draconian battleship, the Ogron ship, and the Master's police ship. So you've got 5 different spaceships in this story, each of them with their own interesting design. The cargo ship looks like a cheap little cargo ship that's just storing flour. The battleship, the Earth battleship, looks like it's a more aggressive thing with a big cannon and it's bigger. And then the Draconian one's sort of a very different aesthetic, but it's big and it's grand. And then the police ship's this dinky little police ship. And they're all great models, and they've all got their own different sort of qualities and aspects. But if you're going to talk about spaceships in Doctor Who, just having so many of them, they're going from one side of the galaxy to the other and back and through hyperspace, that's the thing that just fires a young imagination. And I love Frontier in Space for doing all that. As a boy, I loved that story because it did all that space opera. As an adult, I still love all that, but I also see the stuff that Malcolm Hulke is writing underneath it as well, which adds an extra dimension.
I recognise that you're picking the story because it does all these ships, but do you have a favourite in that story?
Oh, it has to be the Draconian battlecruiser. That's a very impressive design. And don't forget, this is a story that JMS did reference when he was putting together Babylon 5.
Yeah, that is actually true.
And Babylon 5 again has, really different alien ships with, that reflect their cultures. So, yeah, I love Frontier for that. The next pick, though, is yours, Rob. Now, we've both picked something from Season 12.
Yes.
So, let's see if we've snapped. What's yours?
Let's tease it out a bit more. This is my cheat one.
Okay.
Is your Season 12 a cheat?
I wouldn't have said that, no.
Okay, because my Season 12 pick is Nerva Beacon.
Oh, no, it's not a snap, so go on.
Great. Now, this is a little cheat because it's a space station.
Yeah.
And I will say it was 5th on my list in descending order, not just in terms of seasons, but in terms of like most popular through to my least popular. This was like my number 5 pick, so it's a bit out there. I couldn't not pick it though because looks wise, Nerva Beacon is the classic round sort of shape, but with the vertical towers in the middle. And it looks all right for a 70s model, although when you compare it to what they did a decade later with the Time Lord space station in Trial of a Time Lord, what an amazing advance in special effects that was. But why did I choose this over, say, the space station in Trial of a Time Lord? I think it's because rarely for the classic series, Nerva is a location we go back to for multiple stories. And that always intrigued me. It has a name change, of course, from Nerva Beacon to the Ark or Terra Nova or whatever. It just made it feel like more of a real place in the lore of the series. It wasn't throwaway. And I've often wondered if it was possibly the inspiration we have for Satellite 5 and the game station in Series 1.
I think it's got to be.
Where it's the same location renamed over a long period of time. That's exactly what this is. I couldn't not have this. I think it's a neat thing, Nerva Beacon.
No, I think it's fantastic. And again, you're seeing the model work become a big key defining aspect of the show at this point. And Nerva is definitely a step up in terms of that model work. But the thing that I love about it is that they do a fantastic job at making the model work absolutely match the sets.
Yes.
So when they're walking around different parts of Nerva Beacon, you can actually match it to the model and it works and it all ties in, and that's something that doesn't happen nearly enough, and I think it's a really cool thing.
Yeah, no, it's really good stuff, so I couldn't not have it, as I say.
Fair enough. So look, given that I've told you that my next one is also from Season 12 and it's not a cheat, any guesses what it could be, Rob?
Is it a Cyberman ship?
No. Oh, not a bad guess, because I did think of that one. It's the Zygon ship.
Oh, yeah, well, that's fantastic too.
Now, we're talking about evolution in special effects. The Zygon model is surely a step up again from Nerva. And again, there's this sort of feeling of it being a very different technology. It's a more organic technology. The way that all the sets feel like they're actually inside that spaceship, that model. And that all that design comes together really well. The way that it's filmed under Loch Ness is so evocative and so wonderful. But that cliffhanger from episode 3 of Terror of the Zygons, as this massive model just slowly comes out of Loch Ness and the water gushes off it, and then it's that screeching noise and it flies off. That is a moment that it was a real punch to the moment for me when I watched it when I was a boy in the 80s, and it looks so good. And then when it gets blown up again, it's a wonderful big proper explosion. It all just works. It's darkly lit when they film inside. Oh, it's so well done, and the production team's taking such care to do the spaceships well by this point.
I'm trying to visualize it in my head. Has it got a crab-like shape to it?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, that obviously organic sort of stuff going on inside and a crab sort of look on the outside. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I do too. I think it's a really good design, and it's a shame they haven't used it in the occasions they've brought back the Zygon since. I'd like to see that ship design again.
Very true.
Now, my fourth pick is our fifth pick overall, so I've obviously waited a bit at the earlier part of the show, and you're waited definitely at the later part of the show, which is interesting.
Yes.
My next pick was season 17, and I had two on my shortlist from this season. I didn't go with the Jaggeroth in the end, as much as I love that cool spider design and the way that it curls up as it takes off, which is really good. But I've gone for the Movellans from Destiny of the Daleks.
Oh, okay, yep.
Because that is a ship that has got a really cool central concept and is executed really, really well. So this idea of the spaceship that doesn't look like what a spaceship should look like, or what we conventionally think a spaceship should look like. It's all sort of like an upside-down pyramid. And then it lands and it digs itself into the earth. That's a really clever thing. The model work that does it is really, really good. And again, they've gone to really great lengths to make sure that the physical spaceship that they actually film around when they're on the surface of Skara, or in the quarry, if you want to be literal, actually again matches the model, matches the design, and it all comes together. And then when you go inside the Movellan spaceship, and it is what I want a spaceship to look like on the inside. It's all gleaming metal and flashing lights, and futuristic, and big screens and weapons with day-glow pink plastic everywhere, and silver tin foil around stuff. It's just, it looks like a spaceship, and I love the inside and the outside so much. It's just so really, really cool. And for a season that is lambasted with fairness and with justification for the money running out and some of the special effects not being particularly great. Look, I will defend it. I enjoy watching the Horns of Nimon, but some of the spaceships in the Horns of Nimon are, pretty cheap and nasty when you compare them to the Jaggeroth or the Movellans. But when they land with those spaceships, boy, do they land.
Oh, yeah. I was going to mention the sort of the funky interior. It suits the Movellans very much, actually. There's some
absolutely.
thought going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see the production team really sort of going, okay, how do we do something that's not a flying saucer? How do we do something that's not a rocket ship, just a conventional sort of cigar-shaped ship? They're really working hard on the series by this stage, and I, really, really love it. But Rob, the next pick is from you. You've said series 1 by 2. Is this two picks or something that spreads across them?
That's two separate picks from Series 1, Dave.
Oh, excellent. Well, I've got one from Series 1, so we'll do yours, then mine, then go to your Series 2.
Okay. My first Series 1 pick is the Chula warship.
Oh, good call.
Yeah, people might remember the Chula ambulance that attracts the Doctor and Rose to Earth in The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances, but it seems less well known that Jack's personal ship is also Chula-based. It's a Chula warship.
Yes.
Now, we get an okay look at it on screen, although it turns invisible at one point, which certainly cuts down on the special effects budget. But the best look you can actually get of this is in a toy set. Now, we were talking about Star Wars earlier. Do you remember the Star Wars Micro Machines? I think they were called Star Wars Micro Machines. I
do, yes.
Well, back in the day when Doctor Who was white hot and there were a billion toys, not like today, they did a 3-pack of ships, and it had the Chula warship in it. And it looks really cool. The only beef I have with it is it's called a warship, when I think in any other franchise it would be called a fighter. It's maybe a little bigger than an X-Wing fighter in Star Wars, but it's certainly not massive. It's actually very cramped inside. It's maybe like a small bomber at best. Warship is over the top. Anyway, I'm digressing there. I think the design is sexy, and I just adore the way Jack programmed it with Emergency Protocol 417, which was to generate him a large martini in the event that his death was imminent. I mean, that is the height of cool. It's the cherry on top for that character's introduction in the story. The ship looks hot. It had to be on my list.
Yeah, and by this stage, of course, we are into the new series, and there is more money, there is more technology. But yeah, it looks very, very cool, and the script itself even highlights that they are deliberately trying to contrast the quaintness of the TARDIS with sort of, traditional high-tech sci-fi coolness in Captain Jack's ship. And it's a really, really nice one there. I also had a pick from Series 1, and it's a pick that's a kind of there so I can branch off and talk about the genre generally, and that is the Dalek sources from the end of the season.
Snap!
There you go. So I wondered if this was going to be a snap. So look, I'll just say I think that they are a wonderful, iconic design. They are referencing the original Dalek flying saucers from way back in the Dalek Invasion of Earth. They look so good, but I love the way that throughout the series there's been some attempt, for the most part, to give the Daleks a bit of a vibe and a bit of a feel. In the 70s, their spaceships kind of looked very, very similar, enough that their Spaceship and Planet of the Daleks and their Spaceship and Death to the Daleks are similar enough that when I saw Death to the Daleks for the first time, and at the end of part one, this ship sort of hones into view across the landscape, I've gone, oh, that looks like a Dalek ship. Yeah. That's the kind of thing that really works for me. And I think for young kids watching the new series now, who are the age now that I was when I was watching repeats on the ABC in the 80s, to have this design of the Dalek ship and that sound effect and all the rest of it, enough that you only need to see a little bit or see a silhouette, and a kid watching could go, oh, that's a Dalek ship, and have that sense of excitement, I think is a wonderful thing. Rob, why did you pick it?
Oh, my notes are very similar here, Dave. We can go right back to Dalek Invasion of Earth for Dalek sources. But I wanted to flag the Series 1 version just because it's done so well.
Yeah.
When they flew onto the screen, it was like all my fantasies about Dalek sources from, decades past, TV stories, Dalek annuals, comics, whatever. Suddenly it was on the screen and it looked amazing. It was just incredible. So this is really a vote for a concept being brought to fruition in Series 1. Rather than Series 1 doing something brand new, it was just bringing all this stuff together. As you mentioned, the sound inside the ship, the lighting, the design, it's just all there. It's done so well. I can't fault it. And yeah, I'm saying this a lot, but how can this not be on my list?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think the Daleks generally need to be on the list, and that end of Series 1 is just amazing. Rob, your 4th and 5th picks are next, so I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, so we're going into Series 3 here, and this is another... it's a bit of a cheat. I'm going with the Valiant.
Oh!
That took a moment.
It did take a moment. Okay, yeah, keep going, yeah.
Now, it's a bit of a cheat because the Valiant can only fly in atmosphere. Now, if people are wondering what the Valiant is, it's the big flying aircraft carrier that UNIT has in the early 20th century.
The flying hovercraft.
Yeah. And at first glance, it's really bonkers technology for the early 21st century, but it's explained as being designed by Harold Saxon. So with a line, which we often talk about on the show, it makes perfect sense that the Master could bring his smarts to a project like this and create the Valiant. And so we have this, really, really advanced sort of ship flying around the early 21st century. It represents kind of a big idea, I think, and a kind of thinking that I love in Doctor Who. It's bonkers, but it's explained, versus concepts that are bonkers but never explained or poorly explained. This is an aircraft carrier, okay, we know what they are, and it can fly, okay, we get that, and the Master was behind the technology it uses. Perfect, makes total sense, even though it's a bonkers idea. So for that alone, I really rate this, but come on, how cool is it? When you see it flying along through the clouds and stuff, it's like, wow, that's a cool ship.
Yeah, and it does come back, which again gives us that thing that I was talking about before, the Dalek ships of... A viewer, I mean, even as our age, we can say, oh, cool, they've brought the Valiant back. But again, a kid growing up watching the new series would get a real sense of excitement, oh, that cool ship's back. And then the fact that it, I think, is brought down by the Daleks in Stolen Earth.
It's either brought down or they land it.
It's certainly put out of commission and attacked. And that's a really good way of saying, we've got this awesome ship that you've seen for a couple of years now, and the Daleks have taken it out. That's how bad the Daleks are. It's a really good way to bring it home. I think they use it really well.
Yeah, and when I say land, I think land because it had been severely damaged.
Yeah.
Yeah. Final one, Series 8. You probably can't guess this one because, again, it's a bit left of field, but it is a spaceship. It's the Orient Express. Now, it probably helps that I'm very fond of the episode, but come on, the concept of a spaceship styled like the Orient Express is also nicely bonkers. It's another take, I guess, on the Titanic in the Kylie Minogue episode, years earlier, which was a very similar sort of thing. Although this uses more imagination, because whereas the Titanic was a ship, and we often equate sea ships with spaceships, I mean, Star Blazers does that literally with the World War II battleship, the Yamato, a train flying through space is a whole new spin on the idea, and I love it, and aside from the Mummy sort of shambling about, I think I'd quite like to take a trip on it, Dave. It's quite luxurious, and you've got the lady doing a jazzy Queen cover version in the bar. It's fun, and so I'm ending my list here with some good goofy fun. I really like the Orient Express. Look,
that's a really appropriate place for you to finish your list, because you have had some really good kooky picks there, and that is the kookiest of them all.
Thank you.
So I'm really impressed by that. I'm a little surprised, I have to say, that you didn't mention the sailing ships from Enlightenment, because I know how much you like the Davo era.
Oh, they are good.
They are good. But look, we said that your final pick was appropriate because it was extra kooky, and I think my final pick is appropriate because it's extra space opera-y and grand. And I have picked a big, vast spaceship, and that is the colony ship from World Enough and Time.
Oh, with all those levels.
All those levels. And this is one that I think brings in all the stuff that I've talked about. By this stage, well and truly, they can do more or less anything they like with the model. They can take an idea and make a huge, vast, complicated CGI spaceship and make it look stunning, put it on a background that's stunning, over the top of which you have this really cool concept about it being fighting to get out of the black hole and the time dilation that comes from that. Then the interiors are interesting. You get the vastness of the engine rooms down in the lower levels. You get what's happening in other levels. And we're kind of back to the Ark. This is the Ark done with a 21st century budget, really. And they're both big, vast ships with great ideas. But what the colony ship has going for it is that it looks stunning as well. And I think that for me is the point I want to make, that we've watched the growth of the visual aspect of cool spaceships over the course of a dozen or so picks. But throughout the show's history, the imagination behind these ships has been pretty constant and pretty extraordinary. I think that's why we picked them. And although I must admit, just as a side, that does remind me of Tom Baker's comment within the introduction to the Sharda video, when he said, I was talking to Douglas Adams, and he said, I'm going to have an invisible spaceship. Anyone can design a visible spaceship, but an invisible spaceship, that takes imagination.
I love it. I love it.
And that's what these things are. They're about imagination. And look, I love them. I love them all.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned I didn't pick the ships from Enlightenment, and just before we went to air, I was throwing a tweet out there saying, Dave and I are about to record an episode, and a friend of the show, Tim Archer at Subversion13 on Twitter, said, hopefully you'll talk about the bus in Delta.
I loathed the bus from Delta when I was about 9 years old, and I adore the bus from Delta now that I'm 30 or so years older.
Yeah.
It is kind of very, very cool. I do love the way that you open the boot and there's this Hellstrom Fireball 2 engine in this whole bus. It's something I think that worked a lot better for me as an adult. When I was 9, I wanted big cool Dalek ships, but now that's a very fun concept. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah. And look, there are so many we could have picked. As I said at the start of the show, once you start getting into the topic and you think, oh, that's a good ship. Oh, there's another one. Oh, there's another one. It was actually hard to narrow them down.
Yeah, it really was. There are just so many good ideas and so many good visuals, and it's something that I think needs a bit of recognition, and hopefully we've done that.
Yeah, and hopefully we've mentioned some episodes and stories that if you haven't watched them for a while, this might be your impetus to go and watch them.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, let us know via social media, tweets, or writing into us what you think of our picks and what your picks were. Speaking of which,